Please be seated. The court is now back in session. The floor is once again given to Nguyen Chi's defense to continue putting questions to this witness. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I have another 20 to 30 minutes. Mr. Witness, yesterday you testified answering questions of my colleague about Nguyen Chi, and I have in front of me a draft, not official, transcript from what happened yesterday, and I'm paraphrasing from there. You said, yes, I never saw the other people, and you mean Khieu Samphan, Ing Sari, etc., other than him on that one occasion. I saw him, that is Nguyen Chi, with my own eyes in Pursat province, when he was on his way from Pursat to Battambang. It was in 1979 in Battambang province. He did nothing other than being on his trip. He was on a vehicle traveling to Battambang. Our troops were stationed along these national roads, and we were told who would be passing us. When you were told that the person in the car was Nguyen Chi, or that the person was Nguyen Chi, was he in the car is the question, and then you say, yes, he was. Now, Mr. Witness, if I reread this testimony of you of yesterday, it seems that you have been testifying that you only saw Nguyen Chi once in 1979 when he was passing through Pursat province. Am I correct?
Yes. The soldiers stationed along the road told me about him. That was the only time.
That was the only time that you physically, with your own eyes, saw Nguyen Chi. Is that correct, what I'm saying?
Yes, I saw him once. Because after that I never stayed along the highway or the national road.
But then you have to explain to me the following. You also testified that you saw Nguyen Chi in a meeting as early as 1976, a meeting where he spoke about half hour, and that he was talking about building dams and digging canals. Could you explain to me how that is possible if you just said that you only saw him once passing by in 1979?
The meeting took place earlier. It was a separate time.
So when you were saying yesterday in answering the questions of my colleague, I only saw him once in a car in 79, that is not correct. You saw him also in 1976.
I saw him 2 times. Once was during the meeting early, and the second time during the time that he was passing through in 1979.
Very well. Let's go back to this one time that you saw him giving a speech during half an hour. Do you remember the amount of people that were present when Nguyen Chia was speaking about building dams or digging canals?
There were a number of participants. It means there were lots of villagers, not 10 or 20, but there were between 50 to 60 participants during the meeting.
Are you now saying that the people who were present listening to him were villagers?
Besides villagers, there were group chiefs and team leaders. Of course, people came to listen during the meetings, and also the team leaders or the group leaders came to attend the meeting where building dams and raising canals were the main theme of the meeting.
But you were saying that villagers were also listening when he spoke. Was it a public meeting? Was everybody allowed to come?
It depends. Sometimes the meeting was held where a lot of people attended the meeting, depending on the locations of the meeting.
I understand, Mr. Witness, but I'm now trying to be specific about this meeting at which you say Nguyen Chia spoke for half hour and at which you say villagers attended. Was it a public meeting? Was it possible for everybody to come and to hear what Nguyen Chia had to say?
There were various types of meetings. There were mass meetings, for instance, for the opening or the inauguration of something held at the district hall, for instance. And there could be meetings for the people talking about building dams and digging canals. It means about the work. And usually for this kind of meeting, 50 to 60 people would attend the meetings, and then they would relay the contents of the meeting to other people who did not attend the meeting.
Thank you for that answer, Mr. Witness, but I'm referring to this very specific meeting during which you said yesterday that Nguyen Chia spoke for half an hour. My question to you is whether, in respect of this specific meeting, everybody was allowed to come to listen, including villagers.
Regarding that meeting, it was an open meeting. And of course, they would appreciate if more people would join the meeting, because the meeting talked about the planning and about the work, and they would be happy to see villagers or people coming to attend the meeting. Then people would understand about the plan or the work plan.
You were giving earlier a number about 50, 60 participants in this meeting. Do you remember how many of those 50 to 60 people were villagers? People who had just come to listen to what Nguyen Chia had to say?
បន្តិចមើល
People came to listen to what was said during the meeting. And as I said, there were about 60 people attending the meeting. And of course, they would be happy if more people could attend the meeting. Unless there were various or separate kinds of meetings, then people would not allow. There could be meetings where only a group or chief of the leaders of the group or chief or the cooperative could attend such a meeting. But the meeting that I referred to was an open meeting, so people could freely join the meeting.
I understand, Mr. Witness, but my question was whether you remember how many of those 50 to 60 people were villagers, how many people were CPK members, or maybe were wearing black clothes, for instance. How many people were villagers and how many people were Khmer Rouge cadre?
Yes, I said there were people and the group or the team chiefs, and of course they all wore the same kind of clothing. They were living together in the cooperative and they dressed the same. So, for example, for the meeting, some people from the cooperative who did not go to work far away would attend the meeting. And as for those who worked far away, they could not attend the meeting.
Do you remember if during that meeting, during which Nguyen Chia spoke for half hour, villagers who attended were asking questions, for instance, to Nguyen Chia?
No, no one. Whatever the plan was relayed through the instruction, nobody said anything against it. They only listened to what was said during the meeting. They only accepted the plan given to them. For example, to dig a canal or to build a dam, they would just listen to it, and when they returned, they would implement such instruction. And of course, they had to follow the instruction, and there were no questions raised regarding the instruction. They did not dare say about the lack of facility or the poor livelihood. They had to do what was instructed. No questions asked.
So, Mr. Witness, when Nguyen Chia started speaking for half hour during that meeting, did he introduce himself? Did he say, "My name is Nguyen Chia, and I'm here to tell something to you"? Did he say such a thing? Or was there another way that you found out that it was in fact Nguyen Chia speaking?
It was through the people who attended the meeting. He talked about building dams, digging canals, or raising dikes, for instance. That were the main themes of the meeting, and I was told by the people who attended the meeting.
But did Nguyen Chia, for instance, say, "Good morning, everybody. My name is Nguyen Chia"?
I did not attend the meeting, and I only heard what was told to me by the people who attended the meeting. I was told about the plans to build dams and dig canals. They did not tell me anything about what you just said. So the meeting was about the work plan, and of course, once the meeting was concluded, the people would return to their places. At that time, people only had gruel to eat.
I'm a little confused, Mr. Witness. I thought you just said that you saw Mr. Nguyen Chia with your own eyes during that meeting. Are you now saying that you just heard that he was there?
I did not attend the meeting. Of course, I saw him, but it was the people who attended that meeting. I did not.
But could you then, so that I understand, explain again how you knew that the person who was speaking for a half hour was in fact Nguyen Chia?
Because I saw him. I saw him with my own eyes, although I did not attend the meeting. As for the work plan, I did not know. I only was told by the people who attended the meeting, that is regarding building dams and digging canals, as I was busy with my own duties.
But could you please explain the chamber how it was possible that you didn't, while not attending the meeting, you could still see with your own eyes that the person speaking for half hour was in fact Nguyen Chia?
Because the people told me it was him, and of course I lived with the people. Those people who lived with me and who worked with me told me about that.
Very well. Did the people who told you it was Nguyen Chia speaking for a half hour explain to you how they knew it was in fact Nguyen Chia speaking? Did the people tell you he introduced himself before he went speaking?
He only presented to the people about the work plan. He did not introduce himself.
Then do you know how the people that you spoke to knew it was in fact Nguyen Chia who addressed them during his half-hour speech?
The people and the military stayed close to one another, And usually the military would station along the road, and of course they would know which person would pass through their location. And for that reason, the military usually knew in advance of what the people knew.
Mr. Witness, early 1976, did you know what the function or the position of Mr. Nguyen Chia was?
No, I did not know, because at that time I was at the cooperative. I only knew that he was at the higher echelon, but I did not know his specific function or role. I only knew certain functionalities at the sector or the district levels, but he was at the central level, so I could not know.
Mr. Witness, do you remember when you were speaking to the investigators about meetings that you had trouble recollecting the name of Nguyen Chia?
I never spoke about that.
Do you remember when you were speaking to the investigator that the investigator was helping you a little bit finding the name of Nguyen Chia?
President, the witness, please wait. The co-prosecutor, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Kope is leading the witness here. If he has a transcript of the interview that he wishes to present, he may do so. They've made this allegation before, but when the transcript was examined, it turned out, in fact, the assertion that the investigator had suggested Nguyen Chia's name was in fact incorrect. The investigator did not suggest the name of Nguyen Chia to the witness. But Mr. Kope and I shouldn't be arguing about that. If he has a transcript from the interview he wants to present to the witness, he should do that. But he shouldn't be suggesting or leading the witness by characterizing what took place in the interview himself.
Mr. President, I wasn't leading at all. I was asking if he remembered something. But the point, because of time, is I'll move on. My final questions, Mr. Witness. Isn't it in fact true that the first time you ever heard of the name Nguyen Chia was in 2007 when Nguyen Chia was arrested?
I heard of his name earlier, and later on he was arrested, and of course, as I said, I heard of his name much earlier.
Final question, Mr. Witness. Isn't it true that Mr. Nguyen Chia never attended any meeting in 1976 in Pursat province?
I did not see him at that time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Witness, for answering my questions. Thank you, Mr. President.
President, thank you, Council. The floor is now given to Khieu Samporn's defense to put questions to this witness. You may proceed. Kung Samporn, thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. Lamsat. My name is Kung Samporn, counsel for Mr. Khieu Samporn. I only have some questions to put to you. Regarding your testimony yesterday, that is in the morning session at 9:26:08, when you were asked whether you knew the leaders from 1971 to 1975, you responded that I knew the senior leadership, including Khieu Samporn, and the one in charge of the military in Cambodia. Could you try to clarify the person who was in charge of the military? Who was it? Response. The one who was in charge of the military, of course, controlled the military for military planning, for the integration of the soldiers in various ranking and levels. So that person was in charge of the military structure as a whole. Thank you. Question. Do you know the exact title of the person who was in charge of the military under the military structure at the time? Response. For example, if there was a planning from him to attack at certain locations, interrupts the council. My question is about the role or the rank of Mr. Khieu Samporn in between 1971 to 1975, based on your testimony yesterday that he was also in charge of the military. What was his specific role and function back then? Response. I did not know his specific role or function, but he was in charge of the military for the entire country. Thank you. Question. Regarding your military role, as you worked as a soldier prior to 1975, for how many years did you work as a soldier before 1975? Response. I joined the military in 1971 until 1975. Thank you. Question. In 1975, what was your role? Response. I was in charge of a 30-man battalion. Rather, a platoon. Question. How many soldiers under your command within the platoon? I mean the exact number of soldiers. Response. There were 30 soldiers. And of course, that includes all the group and the squad teams. Question. You talk about the team leaders or the squad team. What was the immediate subordinate of yours? Response. For the group chief, they would be in charge of 12 soldiers. And of course, under that, there would be a group leader and a deputy group leader. And then there was a smaller group. It means the person will be in charge of 3 soldiers. And usually the chief and the deputy will be in charge of the 12-man team. And of course, these 3 teams would compose a platoon where I was in charge. Thank you for your clarification. Question. What was the immediate, your immediate supervisor or the one level above you? Response. That would be a company. A company would compose of 100 soldiers, and there would be the commander, deputy commander, and a member. Thank you. Question. And about your immediate supervisor, that is the company, what was the level above that? I mean, immediately above it. Response. I could not grasp it. Of course, I told you about the company. Question. You just stated that your immediate supervisor would be the company commander. And what was immediately above the company? Response. Now your question is clear. About the company, there would be a battalion. A battalion would be in charge of 300 soldiers. Thank you. Question. You talk about Virya or battalion. Can you be a bit more specific? Here I talk about the military structure. The battalion would consist of 300 soldiers. Question. Can you talk more about the military structure? Response. Of course, the structure was designated by the upper echelon or from the zone committee. In my sector 7, there would be 2 battalions. That is 202 and 201. And 201 was formed earlier. Question. You talk about the battalion, and the battalion was about the company. Is that correct? Response. Yes, a battalion is about a company. Question. And what is about a battalion? Response. That would be a brigade. 3 battalions formed a brigade. Thank you. Question. What is above a brigade? Response. Of course, above the brigade is the division, and there will be more soldiers under the division. Thank you. Question. Is there any other level above a division? Response. No. Question. So division is the highest level within the military structure? Response. Yes. Thank you. Question. Have you ever heard about the military headquarters? I heard about the military commander or headquarters, but I do not know which level it was in charge of. I could only describe what I know. Question. Do you know about the commander-in-chief, for instance, but you would not know which position or which level it was within the military structure? Is that correct? Response. Yes, that is correct. It is the higher level about what I know. Thank you. Question. Let me now return to my client. Yesterday you talked about my client, that is Mr. Kiel Sampon. When did you hear the name of my client Kiel Sampon, and where did you hear it? Response. I heard of the name from the central level down to the zone level and to the subsequent subordinate levels. So the order would come from him from the upper echelon down to the lower levels. Question by the council. Let me interrupt. My question is, when did you first time hear about my client's names? Response. It was the year of the planning to attack Phnom Penh. That was 1970 or 1971. Question. So you heard of the name of Kiel Sampon in either 1970 or 71. Can you be a bit more specific? Response. I heard of the name in 1971. Thank you. Question. How did you hear of the name, or from whom? Response. I heard of the name from the upper echelon, so it was from the center to the zone and then to the sector and to the lower levels. Council. Please listen to my question carefully. From whom did you personally hear of the name of my client? Or through which means you heard of the name? Were you told in person or did you hear from somebody else? Response. It was my military commander who told me, because he attended the meeting and he knew about the work plan, and of course he then relayed such instruction to us, the lower level. Question, can you elaborate more further on this point?
Response. I learned about the plan of 1971 that we started to attack places and that forces would be gathered to attack these locations. Question. Is it correct to say that you knew about this in 1971? You knew from your battalion commander? Response. Yes, it is. Question. In 1971, immediately when you joined the army, what was your rank? Response. I was an ordinary combatant. Question. What made you meet your commander who talked about Kiel Sampon? Response. My commander would be with us all the time. Every time we moved places, our commander would be with us. It doesn't matter that he was our commander. He had to have lunch or meals with us every time. Otherwise, he would have nothing to eat, because this was a communal eating and everyone had to be at the same place at the same time when the meals time came. So that's why he was close to us at all time. Question. I may have to interrupt. When your commander was talking to you about Khieu Samphan, were you all by yourself or were you joined by other colleagues? Response. Everyone was there. His subordinates, including me, was there in the meeting. Question. In the meeting, was the message relayed in the meeting? Please respond again. Response. Yes, it is. In that meeting, the message was relayed to us. Normally, it's part of the military strategy when meetings would be convened and then plans would be discussed. Question. How was this meeting conducted? And how were you told? Response. We were told about how to attack the enemies. That's the main things that the military or the soldiers needed to know. I was not informed of how to do farming in the military meeting. Question. So it was in that meeting that you learned a plan to attack the enemies from your commander. Did he tell you anything else? Response. Nothing else except he told us to prepare ammunition and food for the attacks. Question. Just now you mentioned about Khieu Samphan. What about this? Did your commander talk anything about this? And why did he have to say something about Khieu Samphan in that military meeting? Response. It was the plan rendered from the upper echelon, and that it was to be rendered to the subordinates to carry out it. For example, if a letter was sent to us requesting us to go to some places or to do some things, and we, upon receiving this letter, had to follow the content of the letter. Counsel, thank you. I would like to now pinpoint to another specific issue by asking this question. Did you ever attend a meeting where Mr. Khieu Samphan was attending prior to 1975? Response. No, I didn't. I never attended such meeting. I never even met him. I had heard of him. Question. Had you ever received any letter of orders issued by Mr. Khieu Samphan during this period of time? Response. No, I said no already. I never met him. I just heard of him. Counsel Kung Som On. Thank you, Mr. President and Your Honors. And thank you, Mr. Lim Sat. I have no further questions. With that, I would like to cede the floor over to my colleague. The President, you may proceed, Counsel.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning to everybody in this chamber. Good morning to you, Mr. Limsat. My name is Anta Gise. I'm going to be asking you a few additional questions, and I won't take up much of the court's time. I am also a lawyer for Mr. Khieu Samphan. With my colleague just now, we've been talking about the 71-75 period, and now I'd like to turn to the 75 to 76 period, which you yourself have actually referred to in some of your answers to my learned colleagues who were asking you questions before. My first question is connected to the position you said you held in charge of the population of the commune of Chia in the district of Kandin. I'm referring to the statement you made to the investigators from the OCIJ in E3/364, in French 00282198. The Khmer ERN is 00242422, and in English 00250-760. You said that in 1976 the Sot Region Committee and Bakum District Committee had moved me from the military to the mobile unit as the leader of that unit. I was in charge of the Sia commune in Kandang district that was composed of 5 cooperatives. My job was to make them work in digging canals and dikes under the orders of the head of the district committee, and his name was Set. This was just to remind you of what you told the investigators, and the first question I wish to ask you is if you can tell the chamber how the West Zone was organized. You said in that statement that you took instructions from the district committee. Am I to understand that the district committee was just above the commune?
Response. Yes, it is correct. District committee was above the sub-district committee.
Est-ce qu'il existe
Was there a level between the commune and district committees?
Response. Above the district committee was the sector committee.
Et au-dessus du comité de...
And above the sector committee, what was there?
Response. Sector committee was overly in charge of the district committee and commune committee. That's all.
Et qu'en est-il du comité?
And what about the region committee? Was that above the sector?
Excusez-moi, je vais...
Let me repeat that. In the extract from your statement, which I quoted, you referred to the region committee directed by Sut. Now, I'm asking if that is above the sector committee.
Est-ce que vous pouvez...
I'm going to try and do this in a different way to get the message 3. In 1976, what was the position occupied by Sut?
Response. Dasot was the sector committee.
Et 7,
And Set was on the district committee. Am I correct?
Response. I think, allow me to now make this clear once and for all. SOT was the sector committee, and district committee was chaired by another person because it was not part of the sector committee.
en 76, lorsque
In 1976, when you were responsible for the commune population of Sia, who issued instructions to you?
Response. It was the sector committee who was my superior, because sector committee would render orders to the district committees, who then render these orders all the way to cooperatives.
donc si je comprends bien,
All right, if I have this right, then even if the orders came from the sector committee, you personally got them from the district committees. Is that right?
Response. Yes, it is. This is how communication worked.
je vous remercie.
Thank you. What I want to know is how regularly did you meet the district committee and receive your instructions? Did this happen every day or was it once a week? Could you please make that clear to us?
Response. Concerning meetings, sometimes I had to go and see them. Sometimes they had to come and see me. Sometimes we met once a week. Sometimes we met once in 2 weeks. It depends.
Vous avez indiqué que
You said that you were in charge of Sia Commune and that there were 5 cooperatives. Did each cooperative have a chief?
Response. Yes, each cooperative had its own chief, and under cooperative there would be the unit, head of units.
de vos explications,
So what I've understood from what you've told us is that you were appointed as the leader of the Sia commune, as the person in charge of your own unit, and within the district and within the sector were there also military people who were at the top?
Response. No, there was no military, because it was different part from ours. They had their own duties in the army, and we were civilians, and we had different businesses.
donc
And so when you
say that you were moved from the military unit to the mobile unit as leader of that unit, you were no longer a military person. Am I right?
Response: yes, it is correct, because I had already left the military position to become a civilian.
Et dans vos...
And as a civilian, did you continue to perform your activities within the West Zone?
Response: I worked only in my cooperatives. I never dealt with the center, because when it comes to the center, it was at another level which was none of my business.
Donc, si je comprends bien,
So my understanding, therefore, is that during the whole period you were working, the only people that you were actually in contact with were the person in charge of the district committee and the person in charge of the sector committee. That's it, no more.
Response: yes, that's it.
et si vous ne les voyez pas quotidiennement,
And if you didn't see these people every day, is it fair to say that the 5 cooperatives under your responsibility took instructions from you directly?
Response: that's correct.
un dernier point et j'en aurai terminé.
All right, one final point, and then I will have completed my questions. In the management of the cooperatives and looking at the ways in which people who worked in these cooperatives were fed, who was in charge of the meals?
Response: people who were in charge of the meals were those I already told about. For each unit, people would be made to stay in different units which formed a cooperative, and they worked at different work sites, and the head of the cooperatives and the units would be in charge of the food, transporting the foods and supplying the foods to the people. They had to transport rice from the sector office to the cooperatives, and people were in charge of different tasks, and they were tasked with different roles and responsibilities.
Thank you very much for those details, Mr. Witness. Mr. President, that brings me to the close of my questions. Thank you.
The President, thank you. With that, the hearing for today now comes to an end. The chamber will adjourn, and the next sessions will be resumed by Monday at 9 a.m. On Monday, we will be hearing the testimony of Mr. Philip Short, questions to be put by judges of the bench, and then lead co-lawyers for the civil party and the co-prosecutors and the defense counsels. Both parties would be allocated 3 sessions for this. Mr. Lim Sat, your testimony is now complete, and that you are now excused. The court is very grateful to your attendance, and we note how very difficult this has been for you, and we appreciate your patience. Your testimony helps ascertain the truth. We would like to wish you all the very best. Court officer is now directed to assist Mr. Lim Sat in collaboration with the Western unit so that he can be returned home safe and sound. Security personnel are now directed to bring Mr. Kyew Sompon and Nuon Jia back to the detention facility and have them returned to the courtroom by Monday morning, the 6th of May 2013, by 9 a.m. Mr. Nuon Jia is instructed to be returned only to the holding cell downstairs, where he can observe the proceedings through audio-visual link. The court is adjourned.
សូមជ័យក្រោកឈរ